PM e-Drive scheme, which will replace the popular FAME 2 scheme. Now, this project, at an outlay of close to 11,000 crore rupees over 2 years, will incentivize electric vehicles. Electric and hybrid cars are excluded from this scheme since they are already covered under various other subsidies. But an increasing number of electric vehicle users appear to be dissatisfied with the experience. Many, in fact, are going back to the faithful old petrol and diesel engines. Survey firm Local Circles has published a survey on EVs as well. Now, in this, they found that people are not as keen on electric vehicles despite the government's obvious push. So the three big questions that we are asking this evening are: do buyers prefer EVs over petrol and diesel vehicles? Are lack of charging infrastructure and prices the pain points for adoption to EVs? And is India prepared for electric vehicles? Now, to discuss this and more, we are now joined by Hormaz Sorabji. He's the editor of Autocar India. We've got Sachin Thaparia. He's the founder of Local Circles. Vijay Kumar Shanmugam. He's an IT professional and someone who's had a bad experience with an EV. Gaurav Vangal, principal analyst from S&P Global, also joining us on the broadcast. Good evening, gentlemen. Sachin, good to have you back on the show. And first to you, about 5% of the existing prospective car owners have, in your last survey, said that they are likely to buy an electric car over the next year. Now, take us through the findings of your survey and what it essentially indicates.
So what we find, Nupur, is, we were expecting that a fairly decent percentage of people would be willing to buy electric cars in 2024. But the number came out to be 5%, and this is a survey over 300 odd districts, 40,000 responses, where 5% of the respondents said that they were looking to buy, and these are all people who are looking to buy a vehicle this year. So only 5% of them said that they were looking at an EV. And within that 5%, 55% of them said that, the ones who are looking at buying an EV, they said that they are looking in the 8 to 10 lakh bracket. Secondly, the thing that we asked was, why the response is not so encouraging. So what are some of the reasons, that people are not looking at buying EVs? And there's really three key issues that came out. One was the expensive, the vehicles being expensive as compared to the petrol and diesel vehicles. Second reason that people highlighted in the survey was the lack of charging infrastructure in their city where they reside. And this is not a Delhi, Mumbai survey, 300 districts, so you can imagine. And the third issue was, which, was highlighted, was that, for a lot of households, especially if you go to tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 cities, they don't drive their vehicle every day. So for many of these households, vehicle usage or a car usage is limited to just weekends, while during the week they're using a scooter or whatever to go to their place of employment or their business, whatever, right? So therefore, if and that too in smaller cities, you're driving for, 5, 7, 10, 15 kilometers. So it really didn't matter. It didn't make, economic sense to go through that whole process of buying an EV. So those were some of the reasons that were highlighted in terms of why people are not so keen on buying electric vehicles. And, then we also asked people, the ones who were actually looking at buying, why they were looking at buying an electric vehicle. And there, really it was two primary reasons. One was the overall, lower total cost of ownership. Right. People who wanted to, they didn't want to worry about the fuel price fluctuations. And then there is a sizable, population amongst the ones who are looking at buying who care about the environment, or who want to be seen differently, right, with in their social circles, that, as a more responsible citizen, perhaps. So those were some of the reasons to buy and not to buy.
All
but
right.
Overall, a muted response because, last year about 91,000 electric cars got sold in India. And our expectation is that this year is going to be similar or lower.
So essentially, Sachin, I could sum it up by saying that the excitement around the EV seems to be going down quite a bit. Hormaz, good to see you again. Now, you haven't been bullish about EVs at all, and despite the push by the government, not only has adoption been slow, but consumers still seem to be very reluctant to move over. You have studied this quite a bit. What are the top reasons according to you?
See, I think, but to be honest, I think I have to state away. I think long term, we have to go the EV way, especially if we are to meet all our, let's say, net zero, heading towards net zero carbon levels. So I think clearly, that journey has started. I think what we are seeing is a classic example is that we've fallen in between this big gap from the early adopters, who were willing to buy an EV irrespective of the price. They were willing to take the pain of home charging because they really were EV evangelists, to the early majority, which clearly are now weighing up EVs against a normal ICE car. And there will be obviously the obvious questions, the price, the charging infrastructure, a lot of skepticism around it, and there are a lot of other unanswered questions like what will the resale value be? What is the life of the battery? These two questions are still not answered yet because EVs haven't been around long enough to answer these questions. It's only after, we go through a couple of life cycles that some answers will emerge, especially on the battery life. Now, people think that the battery life is only about 8 years. That's typically the warranty of a battery. It could be that the battery lasts much longer. And, it will degrade. How much will it degrade? Again, resale value, all these things make a difference because at the end of the day, for a person, a regular person buying a car, it's an investment. A car is an investment. But having said that, I think, as a city phenomenon, I am completely sold on EVs. There's, nothing better as a city vehicle. Things like, range and all don't make that much of a difference. But again, coming to charging infra, I think the home charging is really the basic, make or break for a lot of EV buyers, because forget about the public charging. A lot of them have never been to a public charger. They are happy at home charging, but people need that home charging. And again, taking a little bit of a statistic from what Tata had told us, that over 90-95% of their Nexon buyers all had home charging, which goes to suggest so many didn't buy a car an EV because they didn't have home charging. So yes, these are definitely issues. I think it will be flat, but I think, honestly, I think there's a temporary hiccup. Once we get more models coming in, more exciting models, I think that will again stimulate EV demand, because clearly right now we don't have a wide choice of EVs, especially in the mass market. We just have the Tata range. That's about it. Now, MG has come and disrupted the market, with the cloud, crazy pricing and a battery on rental that really is set the cat amongst the pigeons. So I think, going forward, a question of, let's say price parity coming, whether naturally or being forced on by the manufacturers to stimulate demand and a wider choice. I think we'll see the EV demand picking up, but I agree. I think this year is going to be pretty flat. I think next year, after mid-2025, with more EVs coming in, we'll see an uptake again.
All right, let's also bring in Vijay Kumar Shanmugam. He's someone who's not had a great experience with an EV, and he's even resolved never to buy one as a primary vehicle. So Vijay, tell us more about your not so good experience.
So this just happened yesterday. So I live in Coimbatore right now, and we had to travel to Cochin. It was a Tata Nexon. And to be frank with you, I was completely sold on EVs till yesterday. And, the charging infrastructure that I thought existed and everything, I had resolved to buy an EV in the next month or two. So now what happens is, Cochin is roughly 200 kilometers from where I live. And the Nexon EV range is roughly around that, back and forth. So when we started, the vehicle had a 93% charge. We go to Cochin, we finish our work there. It's me and my partner. It's my partner's vehicle, and the vehicle was down to roughly around 40 something. So we found a charger in a Tata service center, and we started charging. And for some reason, the charge wouldn't happen. It went up to 61%, but then it kept getting disconnected. So in peak hour traffic, we end up coming to Angamali, which is a town on the Kochi Coimbatore highway. And we found another charger with, at a Tata service center there. And it said that it had charged up to 78% or something like that. And we thought, okay, from here it's like another 150 kilometers, so we can easily make it. We leave Angamali and then we come to Coimbatore. When we reach the bypass, it says around 20% left. We were not sure what was going on because it seemed to have drained a lot. And from that point onwards, it was another 12 kilometers. And my partner and we were like, okay, we are going to reach comfortably. And as we near home, we get off the highway. What happens is that the vehicle just suddenly stops. It went from 20 to 12 to 8 and 5. And all of a sudden now the vehicle won't move. And we have so luckily it was just us men in the car, and we got Coimbatore has a pretty good taxi system, so we got a taxi, parked the car by the roadside, and came home. Then this morning, we've been told is that the second time we charged the charge didn't take properly. So now I'm looking at this, and so I was thinking of buying this car, not as a primary car. I have a primary car.
You've not had a great experience, and these are very real issues that, EV vehicles face. Gaurav, just to bring you into this. Now, I know there are a lot of companies that are actually going in to EV manufacturing, but I'm going to give you one example, Volvo. Now, Volvo had proposed one of the most aggressive shifts to full-time battery fleet by 2030. But now they've announced new plans saying that while they would reduce conventional vehicles to less than about 10% of this mix, the remaining 90% will be a mix of the electric vehicles and the plug-in hybrid model. So clearly, even car makers are recognizing these issues.
So I heard this story, and this is not the first time we are hearing such kind of stories from the consumers in the market. I would say that EVs are good, and as Hormas mentioned, that in the long term we have to move to the EVs. But in the mid-term, and when we look at the Indian scenario, when we talk about the infrastructure, the charging infrastructure, the range anxiety, or the value consciousness of the Indian consumer, I think hybrid makes more sense in the mid-term, while in the short term we are already recognizing that the market is moving towards CNG. CNG is available from the last 2 decades in Indian market, but recently you must have seen that CNG vehicle demand has been increased very rapidly. If I have to quote some numbers, I think today we are sitting with the 17% of penetration in the CNG in the light vehicles, which is going to be approximately 23%. While in EVs, as Hormas just mentioned, there are a lot of action expected in next couple of years in EVs. So there will be pick up in the EVs also. EVs are also going to increase from 2% to the 18 to 20% in the production side. But yes, there is some exports also here. And when we talk about hybrids, I think range extenders and the hybrids are the key technology which can play a significant role in mid to long term in Indian market. So this is not only about Volvo. I think multiple car makers globally has recognized this, that EVs they are delivering the EVs, they are delivering the skateboard platforms, and they are extending the multi energy platforms or the current ICE platforms to over the next decade now.
Absolutely. Hormas, coming back to you, we've had someone who's talked about his experience, and EVs essentially are just giant computers on wheels, and they do encounter a lot of bugs, and these bug fixes are not just expensive, but finding a qualified technician can be hard, and range anxiety is a real issue, as we heard.
No, absolutely right. I think EVs today have got a lot of glitches, and unfortunately Tata Motors, having sold so much at scale, they've earned a reputation for having cars that are unreliable. They keep breaking down. We've seen, a lot of angst on social media. So clearly, Tata have got a problem on their hands as far as, let's say, reliability goes. But I think this is a painful learning curve for everyone. Actually, not only Tata, even other manufacturers, because there's a lot of software now in vehicles. And, don't forget, basically, basically it's car makers, becoming software experts. That's a very difficult kind of transition to make. I foresee that, these issues are going to crop up for the next couple of years. And finally, the solution is what we call a software-defined vehicle, where there's one central software or processing unit which then takes care of all the functions. What is happening right now is you've got multiple functions, whether it's the ADAS, whether it's the BMS, everything trying to talk to each other, and that creates a lot of issues. So I mean, I'll give you one example, like even in a Tata car, on the expressway, if you're going down and you pass a set of cameras, there's some frequency mismatch and your screen goes off. So you have all these sort of small issues which crop up. I think it's part of a learning process. But yes, completely I agree. And I know I can imagine the angst someone feels when your vehicle is unreliable. You don't expect that from an EV. But the truth is EVs have a lot of glitches these days, and it's going to take some time for them to be ironed out.
Right, I know, Harmas, you're short on time. One quick question. We've had Elon Musk come out and say that there appears to be a shift in consumer preference from 100% electric to hybrid vehicles. And we are also seeing, car makers like Volvo potentially shift their focus to that. Do you think that in the short term might be the future?
Well, at the end of the day, I think in this whole EV transition, no one's really spoken to the consumers. Governments have decided, manufacturers have decided that we all have to go EV, not asking the consumers what they really want. And here, finally, now you've got the consumer pushing back because, frankly, if you don't have the charging infrastructure, EVs are not going to fly. And I think, frankly, for me, home charging is the most important thing right now. And then, let's say highway charging and fast charging comes a bit later. But if you don't have that basic, it's going to be very, very difficult. And, honestly, in India, that's going to take some time. God was talking about CNG penetration, but still after 20-25 years, we don't even have a proper CNG network that is as easy or as seamless as, let's say, filling petrol or diesel. Now, if you don't have that, building an EV infrastructure is going to take a lot more time. So I think the kind of solution is hybrids, but we mustn't forget the goal, which is that we have to move towards full electrification, because honestly, for the future, for our children, each summer is getting hotter and hotter. We've got to get that carbon out of the air. CO2 is public enemy number one, and EVs best address that.
Absolutely, Harmas. Thank you very much. I know you're running out of time for joining us. I'm going to go back to Sachin on this one. Now, Sachin, bits of your survey seems to suggest that people find EVs extremely expensive. Now, the government's new scheme essentially is not aimed at car owners. So do you see perhaps, more of a dip coming in sales as far as EVs are concerned?
It very well could, Nupur, unless the manufacturers actually reduce, prices or give rebates and discounts. It very well could be the case. I want to also illustrate, Nupur, on the fact on some of the challenges. So, the gentleman who, drove from Coimbatore to Kochi, one thing that we are also picking up in terms of, community feedback is people who have long distance travel. They tend not to opt for EVs. It is more for city driving, right? So in many cases, it is actually the second car of a lot of people who are EV owners. It's not their primary car. So they have a primary vehicle, which could be a sedan or an SUV, and then you have an EV, for your intercity runs, whether you live in Delhi or Mumbai. And one of the issues that Harmas touched on was home charging. So with home charging, there are a lot of issues that people have been reporting. One is, in some cases, when it's a house and not living in a society, you need to upgrade your power connection for some of the EV owners, and that's a process that is full of hassles and to the extent of corruption in terms of upgrading your power connection. That's one complaint that we've been hearing from people. The second one is, in many cases, it is the RWA, or the Society Apartment Association, basically, that has to give permission for building a charging station, and that doesn't go that smooth in many cases. So I think all of these issues play into what is causing some of the resistance amongst people, along with the price factor, which is of course on the higher side.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Vijay, if I could come back to you, you've had a bad experience. Now, obviously, when you are stranded in the middle of a journey as your electric vehicle refuses to charge, you can't just, call a roadside mechanic to tinker with it and to get it moving. It requires a highly specialized set of technicians, and that probably is also one of the issues that, people who own EVs must be facing.
I agree 100%. See, here's the thing. The vehicle that I was planning to buy was primarily for my mother and my wife. They are the ones who travel more than us in the family because they go to marriages and all of those things. I just can't imagine, now trusting a vehicle like that for the women in the family. What happens if they are stranded on the highway and they have to wait? And, the kind of stress that's associated with that, I don't want to go through that. Now, I still do think an EV is a really good choice if it is just moving within the city that I am in, because someone pointed out, if I can charge overnight and then use it during the day, I think still there are really good positives that can be taken out of this experience. But I don't think as a primary vehicle, it's still there. The charging infrastructure in this particular highway is actually pretty decent. You do find a lot of places that have chargers, but discoverability is a problem again. We don't know where the chargers are. Every company has its own website and stuff. So all of those things, until they are sorted out, I don't think, I would use it as my primary vehicle. In fact, my partner and I, we decided that we were not going to use the EV for these long trips anymore. But that doesn't mean he's going to sell it or I'm against EVs. It's just that
Absolutely.
my idea of where to use it has changed.
And the practical problems associated with it have become more clear to you. So, Gaurav, now, obviously, one of the key issues that everybody's been talking about for EVs is still the infrastructure. Now, just let's leave the Mumbai and a Delhi or a Chennai aside, Bangalore aside, but the pace in which, tier 2 and tier 3 cities where we are seeing the installation of infrastructure is still slow. And not just slow, the cost of the infrastructure is also something that can be a discouraging factor.
So I can't agree more with you on this. So there is a problem of infrastructure. It's not only at the rural city. I think at the tier 1, tier 2 cities we are facing the problem. The only point which Hormaz and I think another panelist was mentioning that people are going for a home infrastructure. What if you don't have the dedicated parking? In Delhi and in Mumbai, we have seen people do not have the dedicated parking. So when you don't have the dedicated parking, how you are going to install the chargers? So we believe that it is going to be very tough, not even at the rural side, even at the tier 1 and tier 2 cities. It will be very tough for the getting penetration in the EV market. That's why I think there are other alternative fuels which are available or which are going to be available in the Indian market makes more sense for the India.
Also, the other thing, Gaurav, is, consumer surveys in the US have suggested that battery, electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles seem to perform worse than their, gas equivalents, their petrol and diesel equivalents in about every repair category measured. So do you think that's also something that is discouraging people? Because those are countries, the West had a faster adoption of EVs and now they seem to be going back.
So it's not only about India that we are facing these kind of discouraging factors. I think globally people are realizing, companies are realizing that the EV adoption rates cannot go very rapidly in other markets. So as per our understanding, we are facing multiple issues like legislation is one of the issues. Political landscape is one of the issues for the EV adoption. Residual prices is one of the issues which I think Hormaz has mentioned, that how you are going to, what value you are going to get for the second-hand EV. So there are issues, and it's not only for India. We are value conscious, we are cost conscious, but it's not only applicable on India. I think globally consumers are thinking in that way.
All right. Sachin, any final thoughts on this? Obviously, everybody would like to have a greener world, and EV perhaps is one of the ways to it. But the interim challenges do seem to be quite a bit.
No, absolutely, Nupur. And I think, the only other point I'd like to cover is, which I think we touched on a little bit, is is the repair, which Vijay faced essentially, or assistance, technical assistance on the road. This is an area where if, let's say, it is a Tata vehicle, then your only option is to go to Tata for repair. And as it is, after sales service in our country and in many other countries, that is the big profitability channel for many of the manufacturers. And hence it is not affordable. So while petrol and diesel vehicles, you can get them repaired at an affordable price with any mechanic, right? You don't have that benefit with EVs. So that's something that the manufacturers have got to think as well, that not only, do they provide discounts and subsidies to sell more EVs, but then also make that service and the technician call affordable as well.
All right. Sachin, Vijay, Kumar, as well as Gaurav, all three of you, thank you very much for joining us on the broadcast. So the consensus that appears to be emerging at this point, of course, is that EV may be the way forward, but perhaps there is a little more focus on hybrids right now because of the challenges that adoption to EV faces. Thank you very much for watching The Big Story.